Hi guys, I'm back with a video. Now, I've wanted to talk about this for a while. It's the difference between being nervous and being anxious, and by that I literally mean having anxiety, being anxious and being nervous, and the difference, because I feel like this is really misunderstood, and this is something that I have struggled with getting people to understand. So now this is like your default reaction to something that's potentially scary. So you can be nervous for an exam, or you might be nervous, like any situation, you might feel nervous, but nervous is a feeling that will go away. Nervous is not anxiety at all. Anxiety is something you live with constantly. It doesn't go away, and it often has a lot of physical symptoms, and sometimes your anxiety can be triggered from nothing, or what feels like nothing. So you might be lying in bed and be anxious. Like, you might lie in bed knowing you've got an exam the next day and be nervous, whereas you would be anxious all the time. Anxiety is effectively an illness. Like, there are different anxiety disorders. I mean, the most common is like generalized anxiety disorder. It affects every day of your life. That's the main difference. A bit like with OCD and just wanting to fix something. Well, when something affects you every single day, when it puts barriers up for you, when you're like sort of fighting it every day, the overall impact of it is negative. That's when it's an illness, and that's the difference between anxiety and nervous. Anxiety has physical symptoms. For me, when I'm nervous, it's a good thing. To be honest, I would say in general, if you're nervous, it is a good thing. Like, nerves are this factor that stop you being, say it's for an exam, it stops you being overconfident, but it's the adrenaline that you need to get yourself through it. Nervous is a essential thing. You need to be nervous. But full-on anxiety, being ill, is not the same at all. It's not a logical process. The logic's gone. Like, it is logical to be nervous, but it's not necessarily logical to be anxious. Symptoms of anxiety can be really quite nasty, like panic attacks, how do you say that? Palpitations, sweating, vomiting, not being able to speak, like freezing up, not being able to speak. Obviously, panic attacks, if you suffer from them, they can literally feel like you're going to die. That's not what nervous should do to you. And if you're confusing anxiety with nervous, you should probably see a doctor. Like, if you're sat here thinking, well, that's what I thought nervous was. No, nervous is different. Like, obviously, shaking and stuff is normal with nervous, but nervous goes away. Anxiety is something that doesn't really go away. It's constantly there. It constantly affects you and gets in the way of everyday life. And that's what, in general, people should understand about disorders and mental illnesses and just normal reactions. Being nervous for an exam, it wouldn't stop you doing the exam. It wouldn't stop you going outside. If you have an anxiety disorder, it's literally it literally is almost like body binding. It's like you can't do that thing. It's physically impossible for you to do that thing. And if you try to, you'll have a panic attack. If you, like, I have been on a train before and I've had a panic attack on the train, and it's horrible because you know that you can't get off the train, you can't take yourself to one side, and if you do, there's no one really there to talk you to come and sit with you and talk to you. And it's so hard to get people to understand that anxiety disorder is something that we should be taking seriously, and not like, oh, you're just nervous. There are ways to cope with anxiety disorders, but it's not the same ways as coping with somebody who is just nervous, because honestly, nervous doesn't impact on your life, but anxiety does. Nervous will pass. It's appropriate in certain situations. It's good to be nervous for certain things. Anxiety is totally different, and it's an illness, and it impacts your entire life, and it can take months and months of years and years of treatment in order to just be able to deal with it. Never mind if it goes away or if you get any better. Sometimes, a lot of the time with mental illness, the key is to find coping strategies that work for you. So please, if you were watching this video and any of this rung a bell with you and you were thinking, now that you think about it, your nervous sounds like anxiety, please go and see a doctor, because it's really important. And you're not being stupid, and panic attacks are terrifying, and anxiety is a horrible thing to live with. Like, I live with it all the time. You couldn't go and get medication for being nervous, whereas some people's anxiety is that bad for them. They have to take medication every single day of their life just to get it to a point where they can control it. You won't get diagnosed with being nervous, but you will get diagnosed with having anxiety. Anxiety can also lead on to other things like depression. I think that's the most common one. Anxiety disorders can obviously be on another scale, such as OCD is an anxiety disorder. There are different types of anxiety disorders. But yeah, people kind of forget that. People forget that OCD is like a nasty disorder to live with, and that's an anxiety disorder. Mood disorders are different, so anxiety disorders, they're all different, and they shouldn't ever be confused with a normal reaction. Like, people are constantly confusing normal everyday things with mental illnesses, and we need to stop, because it's adding to a stigma, and it takes away from people's ability to live a normal life. Like, at university, I've had so much. It's been so hard for me to go to uni with anxiety, just because people don't really know what it is. People keep thinking that nervous and anxious are the same, and it's not. It's like I keep having to say, look, I have an anxiety disorder. It's not like you being nervous, it's me getting to the point where I can't get on the train. That I have to get the train to uni, and I get to the point where I'm so ill that I actually just cannot go. And there's a difference. If I was nervous, it would be controllable, but anxiety is not something I can control on my own. I have to have help with it. And yeah, I am learning to deal with it. It's actually something that I feel like is more ignored. I feel like people kind of know about depression, and even if they stigmatise it, they're aware that it's a thing that people have. And people kind of feel sorry for you when you have depression, whereas people just think that you're being a bit stupid when you say I have anxiety. They don't take it seriously. And I feel like it's less so than with depression, or at least for me. I feel like I can start conversations about depression and people take it seriously. It doesn't mean that I necessarily get help. It just means that I can tell people I have depression. And I feel like people are more likely to take you seriously if you say, I have depression, so it means that this is hard and this is hard. Whereas if you say I have anxiety, they just think, well, being nervous, well, that's everybody gets nervous sometimes. I actually didn't realise how big the effect of anxiety has on my life until my last lot of counselling, where I think it was my last lot of counselling where my counsellor said, well, actually, a lot of the things that you talk about stem from anxiety. It's not necessarily always depression. It's actually that you're quite an anxious person, because I have been diagnosed with anxiety, and I always kind of just assume that it's always my depression, but actually there's a whole nother side to me. There's a whole nother part of me that is extremely anxious, and I have another illness that sometimes is a bit neglected. I don't think anxiety is really talked about. I don't know if that's just me. I feel like people with depression and people who will talk about depression, but I feel like anxiety is kind of brushed under the carpet. Even on my channel where I do have anxiety, I don't really do that many videos on it. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave any video suggestions in the comments, and see you on my next video, which I'm not sure when that's going to be because I've been really lousy recently. Bye.